Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Consulting Corner. My name is Lauren Roberts, and I'm the Director of Agency Consulting here at Kite Technology Group. Today, our topic is going to be a mindset shift when migrating to Applied Epic. This session is going to have some really great information for you, whether you're considering a move to Applied Epic or whether you're already in the process. So the first thing that we want to cover are some of the major components of migration. Things that you'll need to keep in mind that are going to happen throughout this process are things like data conversion and cleanup. Your information in your previous system, no matter what that system is, may convert over in a specific way into the Applied Epic database. Your implementation team from Applied will help you understand how that data is going to convert and what's going to convert and what might not convert. That is still a possibility. During that process, you'll get a couple of sample data reviews to be able to see how that information is going to come over into your system. And you'll also have the opportunity to do some cleanup prior to your migration. Of course, you'll always want to consider that in the future, there will likely be some post-migration cleanup that's needed as well. In addition to that, there will be lots of key decisions you'll need to make for configuration and the setup of your Epic system. You will, of course, go through the process of having those discussions with your applied implementation lead, things like your accounting methods, or what are your servicing roles going to be. Those different things are going to be very important decisions that you'll need to make prior to going live. In addition to that, you will also be able to test some of that information. You'll get things like a demo database where you can test out some of those configurations, and you'll want to make sure that you do your due diligence on understanding those decisions and how they affect your agency and your workflows. And then, of course, training is another huge component of this process. Not only will you need to be concerned about training for the entire staff, but first and foremost, you'll want to make sure that your core team understands how the workflows are going to work in Epic, and make sure that there is training established and workflow development being worked on throughout this process so that you have some folks that are really good support for your entire staff once you migrate over to Applied Epic. So some of the critical success factors that we see are management and buy-in of management and key decision makers as far as leading the change for moving over to this brand new system. Applied Epic is not. It's not TAM, it's not AMS 360, it's not Now Certs or QQ Catalyst or any of those other systems. It's a brand new system. And it's really important for your agency and your management specifically, anyone that's a lead in the agency, to understand that this is a big change. And what we really don't want is to try and make the system like the old system, because we really need to understand that everything is new. And if we do really try to make it like the old system, you're not going to be able to take the full advantage of all of the efficiencies and all of the great new things that Epic is going to offer to you. Another really important part of this process is making sure that you review the sample data. If you do not do your due diligence on reviewing and understanding the sample data that you receive into your Epic sample databases, you may run into some really serious issues after you go live, when you finally receive your final production database. So it's really important to make sure that you go all in and ensure that that data is reviewed properly and diligently. Testing the data is another key factor to success in this process. So while you are receiving sample data, you can also go in once that's been reviewed and test that information out. So you can test to see if configuration choices that you've made are working properly. You can go through adding a policy, adding an activity, things like that to test and make sure that everything's working properly. It's also really important to understand how configuration works in Epic. There are countless options for you to customize your configuration when it comes to Applied Epic. Epic out of the box is a great product, but there are a lot of efficiencies that you can gain by understanding, truly how the configuration works and what impact that has on your workflows. You'll also want to make sure that you have a great internal core team. Your internal core team really needs to be folks that are on board with this change. They're excited for new improvements for the agency, and they're really just willing to move forward and make a change. Those folks that are maybe a little tech savvy or have plenty of insurance experience, even those who have had prior Epic experience would be helpful in this migration process. But your core team is going to have a lot of responsibility. So it's also important to make sure that those that are on your core team have the bandwidth, or you provide the bandwidth for them to be able to participate in this process, because there will be a lot of review and decision making that will need to be done. You'll also want to make sure that you have representatives from each department that are relatively knowledgeable of the inner workings of each of those departments. So consider having someone from your accounting area, your commercial lines, personal lines, benefits, any other departments that you may have. You're going to want to have a lead person in each of those areas, because decisions that are made are going to affect the entire agency, not just one department. So we certainly want to configure everything based on a commercial lines perspective when you have lots of other departments as well. You'll also want to understand what data fields are important for reporting purposes, because as you are migrating over, you will get the chance to clean up some of the information that's coming over from the previous system. So making the right decisions as far as what type of billing companies you have, issuing companies, and things like that are really going to help you, once you migrate over into Epic, keep things a lot cleaner and neater as you use the system. And then, of course, make sure you stay on time. Applied's timeline is pretty stringent. They do have lots of different resources that are scheduled out well in advance for this process. So when they give you a timeline and say, hey, this needs to be done by the 1st, they mean it. So you want to make sure that you engage, understand what all of the timelines and due dates are, and really make sure that you get those items completed in a timely fashion, because that actually can put off your entire migration, which could create a lot of other issues. All right, so just to kind of give you a quick project overview, now things change over time as far as the type of agency you're in, the type of database you're coming from may have a few changes in this overview altogether, but this kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking into as far as what this process is going to look like. So you're going to have things like your kickoff meeting. You're going to review hardware and software compatibility, because yes, you do need to make sure that you are up to par as far as Applied is concerned, in order to use the Applied Epic system. You'll send sample data into Applied, of course, have everybody on your core team perform some training or complete some training modules through Applied University, just to start getting familiar with the system itself. And then you'll begin things like configuration. You'll go through several meetings with Applied where they'll focus on a specific area. Let's say it's company configuration. You'll focus on that area and make sure that you understand what a billing company is, what an issuing company is, and how those decisions that you make for the configuration are going to affect your overall end result in production. You'll get to review that data once they've loaded it into the Epic system. And then, of course, you will have the ability to send in change requests. A change request is going to give you the ability to say, hey, Applied, we reviewed our sample data and we found this issue. Please help us out. Now, in some cases, the issue is a result of your original system data. Sometimes it is an error with the migration itself. So those are some of the key items that Applied will help you with, and help you understand whether it is truly an error in the system, if it's coming from your system, or if that's just the way things migrate. You'll go through several old new lists to basically, again, do some cleanup and confirm, whether you have duplicate employees, duplicate clients, duplicate companies and brokers. Do you have companies that are brokers, but they're actually listed as companies? So you'll go through several of those lists, be able to scrub those, identify accurate configuration so that when you get into your new system, everything's nice and clean. Then, of course, you're going to have to engage your staff in applied university training as well. You're going to want them to really be familiar with the system prior to getting into your formal training, because the last thing that your trainer wants to hear is, how do I get into Epic? Not good. So it's on you as an agency, as your core team or as leadership, it's on you to make sure that your staff is completing those applied university courses so that they're really prepared for that training that's going to be either in person or virtual with your instructor before you go live. You will want to make sure that workflows are developed. One of the things that we find often is that folks say, okay, well, I'll just go with the applied standard workflows, but that might not be the best for your agency. So you will want to consider what needs to change in the workflows. Is this really going to work for our staff? Does this work for both departments and such? And do we need to configure anything differently to make sure that the workflow works for us as well? Couple of other things that are going to happen. You may have a sample too, you may not, just depending on the timeline of your migration and what type of system you're coming from, but you will probably have an option to review a sample too, if that's applicable for you. So you'll want to make sure that you really take advantage of that second sample to ensure that everything that you found in the previous sample has been resolved. And then finally, you're going to finish up Epic configuration. Now, this sounds like a really streamlined, simple process, but there are so many calls and different things that are going to happen throughout this. Things like coordinating with all different types of leads from Applied. You're going to have your Applied implementation lead, but you'll have an accounting specialist, an interface download specialist. You'll also have a specialist who will help you with your CSR 24 and Applied mobile type products. So you'll have no shortage of resources throughout this process, but keep in mind that you may have multiple calls during a week because there are multiple folks that are working to help you through this migration. So last couple of things to keep in mind as you're going through this project is that you're also going to have a dark period. This is really important for everyone to understand and prepare for. There will be a time where Epic has or Applied has taken your final sample data or final source data, and they are preparing it to enter it into your production database. During that time, you will not be able to enter anything into Applied Epic. You also will not get any of the information from your current system moved over into Applied Epic. So you can continue working in that previous system, but you will have to duplicate that information all into Epic once you go live. So keep in mind that it's already a busy time, but you're also going to have to understand that data re-entry is going to happen as well. And then, of course, activation day, make it a party, do something fun, encourage your staff and let them know that this is something great and wonderful. We have a lot of agencies who will have a pizza party. We've seen happy hours after work, ice cream parties, all kinds of stuff, because it really is an exciting time. It's something that's, going to be a little bit stressful and you're going to get through it, but it's really important to create a lot of positivity around this because it's a big investment and it's taken a lot of time to get through. And you really want to make sure that again, everybody's on board. Okay, so a couple of examples for you just to keep in mind on configuration decisions. I've mentioned a few as we've gone through this, but a few things that you want to kind of be prepared for are things like your agency structure. If you just have one agency, great, no problem. But when it comes to multiple agencies, multiple branches, departments, and profit centers, you're going to have to make a few decisions based on what your agency makeup is. And you want to make sure that those get set up correctly from the start so that you don't have to have any scripts or anything like that in the future. You're also going to have security options and settings that you'll need to set for your staff, how your folks are going to access information, what information they're going to access. And you'll have to decide on things like servicing roles. Do you have an account manager and a producer? Or do you have an account manager and a producer 1 and a producer 2? Do you have other areas that you're going to have servicing roles for? So are there going to be combined accounts, benefits, and commercial? So, those are some of the things that you'll need to keep in mind when it comes to servicing roles. Accounting methods and transition. This is one that a lot of agencies get hung up on because they've been doing things the same way for so long, and now you have a decision to make changes if needed when it comes to your accounting methods. And your accounting methods are going to really drive what workflows you're going to be processing in the system as well. Things like what GL account you're going to deposit to, how you're going to be paying your producers and such. So make sure that you're prepared for that conversation and you have all the right folks involved. And remember, accounting does not convert when it comes to applied Epic. So whatever transactions you had in your previous system, those are not going to come over into Epic. You're going to get things like your opening balances for client receivables, but those will be a shell. There's a lot of data that you're still going to have to reconcile out of your previous system. Things like your GL balances will come over, but again, it's just that client transaction detail that you won't be getting in your new system. Chart of accounts is, another key consideration for accounting. Again, this is an option to clean up that information. Things like your download setup, Applied is going to help you with that as well. Old new list, you'll decide on things like what types of transactions do you need in your system? What types of policies do you need in your system? What policy status codes, new, renewal, rewrite, canceled insurance request. All of those are going to be options that you'll have. And then, of course, there'll be some workflow development that is needed. You're going to have things in Epic that are called events. Those are things that start a workflow. You'll have activities, of course, which you probably have in your source system. You'll also have the ability to have additional tasks on activities, which are kind of like a little to-do list, which are neat. And then you can also require and desire fields in Epic. So if you have some fields that are consistently not being completed, you actually can require those in Epic, which is pretty cool. You'll have other things like sources and agency defined categories. Some of those things might not be configured just initially, might be kind of an add-on feature that you decide to use later on. And then of course, you'll have things like what premium fields do you want to use for reporting purposes. And then lastly, you have things like your sales automation. You'll have how do you want to set up your sales teams, sales stages, all for your opportunities and sales automation. Now, these are just a few examples of configuration decisions. There are far more beyond this. Please do not take this as the only list. And a couple of other questions that we get asked. One is, how much data should we bring over? So, should we bring all data? Should we bring just 7 years of data? Or should we just bring over everything and enter only new data? Bring over nothing and bring over only new data. So it's very important for you to identify how much information you want to bring over. 7 years is pretty standard across the board, unless you don't have that many years in your current system. We have seen that happen as well. You want to make sure that things like, attachments and activities and certificates, all of those items are going to be coming over in your data, and make sure that you review to understand if there are things that are not going to be able to come over in your data. You also want to consider where your attachments are housed. A lot of times there's a few extra steps and a little bit additional cost to you outside of Applied to retrieve that data. So when you have something like an ET file, and that's where you're storing all of your attachments, you probably will have an additional fee from somebody like ET file to pull those attachments. And a lot of times you have to do that multiple times, again, for sample data and production. So a couple of things to keep in mind as you're trying to make that decision of what data are we going to bring over. Okay. Preparing your data, there's a lot of things that Applied will provide you with as far as pre-migration cleanup is concerned. You'll have the opportunity to clean up things like hidden apps. Those are something that happens in TAM. You'll also have the ability to clean up your entities that are brokers, employees, vendors, finance companies, and other interests, or maybe not bring them over. I'm a fan of not bringing over vendors because we might have had these vendors entered for years and years and years, and there's duplicates and all kinds of stuff. So that's one of those things you can kind of start fresh with if you like. You can also make sure that you have open activities closed. open claims closed. Really try to get that information cleaned up before you migrate, because once you migrate over, it's going to be a little bit of a whirlwind for the first month or so. So the last thing you want to do is have a bunch of old stuff in the system that's kind of clogging up your home screen and your to-do list. It's also really important that you focus on cleaning up your accounting. This is a great opportunity to clear out old receivables, to get your GL in balance, and make sure that the only information that you're bringing over is valuable. It's current and it's accurate data. We've seen several times where agencies will, bring over their balance sheet and their open receivables, and they're from 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Those are items that it's going to be really hard to research. So rather than bringing those over into the new system, we highly recommend that you clean those up in your previous system first. And then that way, when you come over into Epic, everything again is all nice and squeaky clean. All right. So moving on, what are some of the things that your core team's going to do? Things that you want to keep in mind is they're going to work with the applied implementation team on a regular basis. It's very important that everyone communicates together, stay on the same page, make sure that you're reading and reviewing all of those applied follow-up emails that they're going to send out. Keep an eye out for, scheduling with different leads throughout the process. You're going to be discussing those key decisions that are going to have an impact on all departments, like I mentioned previously. And they're also going to be responsible for reviewing the sample data and the old new list. So you're going to want to make sure that the team that you have is, again, very knowledgeable of the companies that you work with, the processes and procedures that you have in your current system, even to the extent of how producers are being paid. Those are the things that are going to be really important when you're making these decisions, because they're going to affect how that information is going to go into the new system. Also really important to make sure that you gain an understanding of Applied Epic and how it works. Be prepared for that. Don't wait, like I said, until the last minute. If you are reviewing your Applied University sessions and completing those trainings, you're going to get a much better grasp and be able to have some, more knowledgeable or more educated responses for those decisions that you're going to need to make in Epic. And then, of course, you're going to be working on workflow development. So you're going to want to review what that applied standard workflow is and work together to make that customized for your agency. And of course, make a plan for training and your post-activation support. Post-activation support is one of the most valuable pieces of this process. I have seen where, internally there's not a whole lot of folks that have really taken on understanding of the whole process. So after the go live, you're kind of stuck with, oh, okay, we've got to call Applied for everything. But when you have a good core team who really has focused on the understanding of this entire process, that Epic is a new system, we have new workflows, we have new activity codes and transaction codes, and things are going to be in a different place. When you have somebody that can really embrace that change and be able to communicate that and support your staff in that fashion, you're going to have so much more success when it comes to that post-activation process. All right, so of course we see some pitfalls as well. So it wouldn't be fair to share all of the positive, happy, sunshine, and roses things without telling you what could go wrong. So in this case, some of the things that we see is that if you do not review your sample data well and correct the issues, you could end up with a mess when you get migrated over into Epic and after you've gone live. Things like producer commission being incorrect or missing on policies, or maybe producers come over incorrectly, they should have been switched over to a broker and vice versa. Things like your certificate holders, making sure that those have migrated over, making sure that policies have applications. If you have certain custom forms in your previous system, they may not be available in Applied Epic. So you may need to engage with Applied to get a custom form that's available, or you may need to outsource that to have someone create that custom form because the out of the box applications that are available are just going to be your record forms. Another thing is underestimating the amount of time that it can take to complete all of these assignments. Applied, like I said, has a very stringent timeline. So when they say you have a week to get this completed, you really have a week to get it completed. You need to get it done as quickly as possible because you also have a data analyst that is reviewing your data and making sure that things are looking like they're supposed to as they're going into the system. So if things aren't completed, lists are not reviewed, then when it gets to the data analyst, they don't have all of the pieces of the puzzle to be able to put that information into Epic properly for you. In addition to that, you will need to have some flexibility, especially as it gets a little bit closer to your go live date, because you will have multiple folks reaching out saying, hey, I'm your CSR 24 person. We need to have a call and go over setting up CSR 24, or hey, I'm your accounting person. We need to have a call to go over your accounting configuration or pre-go live information. So be prepared to, have some of those almost last minute feeling type engagements. Just be aware that those are going to pop up. So that's another thing to keep in mind is making sure that you don't have a ton of folks out during this time. There are going to be several meetings that are very important. I know it's hard to say, no, you can't take any PTO during this time, but it is really important that you have the resources available to complete all of these tasks. And so, if you've got a person that is going on vacation the week before your blackout week, that's probably not a great thing. Probably not a good idea to take off when you're training either. So those are some of the things that you want to plan for, prepare your staff for, so that they're not caught off guard when it comes to, hey, you really need to be here. You also want to make sure that you understand the configuration decision. So the lack of understanding and the consequences of some of those configurations can really cause some issues. If you look at a company old new list and say, well, just mark them all as billing and issuing. You've just created a really, really big amount of chart of accounts, sub accounts. And that's something that, while it might be easy and simple to just say, oh, just check all of the boxes, that's going to cause you a lot of heartache once you go over into Epic, because you're going to have a lot of boundaries that you can set for things like billing companies when you go over into Epic. And you would not want to just say, you know what, that's fine, just do them all the same way. Not okay. And of course, some folks bring over too much data from the old system. It's not something I see very often. Most often, agencies, like I said, will not bring over more than 7 years, but we do see that there's more brought over from time to time. And the more data, the junkier it's going to be. The more opportunity there is for issues to occur. And lastly, staff not spending enough time working and on the training and working in the sample data or in the demo database. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a training occur and folks get into training and say, wait, what's an actions button? I've never seen that before. How do I find a client? Those are things that you should really be prepared for prior to going into training. And the negative impact that has is that everyone else that has done their job and gone into look at the training and tried to understand, the settings and the buttons and the things that are available, they're going to be held back somewhat, because then your trainer's going to have to stop and say, oh, well, here's how you get to that. Here's how you do this. Here's how you do this. So you're really putting big delay on the process of the training. So really important to make sure that those university courses get done and that they are prepared for that training when it happens. All right, couple of notes here. There are some trainings that will not happen until after you go live. So when you go live, you're not going to have any type of reports training or knowledge immediately. Of course, there are some courses that you can take. There's plenty of resources through Applied, but your reports is something that you're going to want to prepare for, so that when you do get to your reports training, you'll be able to, provide your trainer with, here's the reports that we are used to using. And then you'll also discover some really cool new reports as well. In the applied help file, there are some additional notes on the reports themselves, and maybe something like, here's what it was in TAM, this is how it converts over in Epic. Again, that's just TAM specific. We know that there's a lot of different databases, but that's one of the examples of how you can get some help from Applied. So just be prepared for that. That reports will be a little bit after the process. And then, of course, if you want to gauge whether or not you're really ready to go, you can check a couple of these boxes off. Make sure that you've done all of the self-training through applied university classes. Make sure that you've checked off all the boxes on items that you were supposed to do for data conversion. Always go back and re-review that information. You're going to have a data conversion checklist from Applied that's going to show all of the key decisions that you've made, scripts that you've decided on, and how things are going to come over, how much data is coming over, and all of that good stuff. So always good to go back and review that. Make sure that anything that you were supposed to configure in the system has been completed. Don't wait till the last minute to put in things like company commission agreements or producer broker commission agreements. Make sure you get those entered in as quickly as possible. And then, of course, you want to make sure that your accounting configuration is all set. You've decided on the right things, and you have your system cleaned up so that when it's time to go live, you're going to be able to do that, and you won't have a lot of delay after your go live date for entering in your opening balances. It's really important to get those in as quickly as possible so that you don't have a situation where you don't know if a balance is due or not from that specific client. Interface configuration, another box to check there. Make sure that you have worked with your interface specialist, turned on all of the download things that you needed to turn on in Ivans, and made sure that all of your carriers are properly configured in the system. Again, your lead will be very helpful in that process. You'll be surprised how much they'll do for you that you don't have to do. They're just going to want your confirmation. Make sure that you've validated your workflows. Make sure that someone has gone into the demo database, looked at that workflow, completed that workflow. They understand the workflow. If there's any part of that is wrong or isn't working, you have the chance to correct that before you go live. And then, of course, make sure that you've taken some time to review the additional products that you're going to be using and how you're going to implement and use those in the agency, like your CSR24, CSR24 mobile, and your mobile insured apps. All right, so with all that being said, I think that covers just about everything there is to consider when it comes to the Applied Epic migration. Your mindset shift really should be that this is a brand new system. Here's all of the things that we're going to prepare for. We're going to make sure that we do this to the best of our ability so that when we go live, everything is going to be great. You don't want to make those issues that have happened in the past to other agencies happen to you. You want to be prepared with training, be prepared to make those decisions, have your dream team in place for your core crew that's going to be helping you get through this situation. And of course, if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you don't know if you can make all those decisions, or you just want somebody in the background to help, or maybe you don't have a key person in your agency to do all of these things for you, you can always give us a call. We can help with the entire process. We've been a liaison with Applied Epic and migrations for several years now, and we love helping agencies and helping you through the process so that you come out on the right side of this and you have everything working as best as it possibly can. Our goal, as well as Applied's, is to make sure that you have a successful migration. Absolutely every time. We know it's tough. We've all been there ourselves. So we want to just help you get through that process and understand all of the key things that are going to occur during this process. So give us a shout, give us a call if you're interested in some additional help when it comes to the migration. We can also be your liaison to help through. But hopefully you have learned today that this is what to expect when it comes to an Epic migration, or what you might be in the process of expecting and doing right now. So either way, good luck to you. I hope you've enjoyed our episode of Consulting Corner today, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.